Legislation, the brownstone dwellers of South Brooklyn, and an important move today by Human Rights Commission Chairman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who is my guest in the studio. We begin by turning our eyes south towards the lower tip of Manhattan and an unusual landmark report by staff producer Ron Finley.
Reorganizing of lyricists decide the category I fall into. When I'm on the venue, I tend to serve a delicacy, fella. Peep what's on the menu, the slept on phenomenon. That might be in my palm and arm. Many wanna hold me back, cause I'm coming on strong. Subject matters are struck. My imagination is wonder. I underestimated by sons of bitches who have power to sign me, but fronted wanted stuff I didn't fit into my phonics on the uninvited. Telling me do this, do that, do this, do that, do this. In order to sell this, you gotta pursue this type of program. I ain't no mascot for no master. I missed the slave drive some odd years ago. And yo, oh, it's not about to be between an imaginary tug of war. Feeding me pork style with bread like a pigeon. So I say, get your ears ready for creative control, cause no one's gonna tell me how to sell out my soul high. Get your ears ready for creative control, cause no one's gonna tell me how to sell out my soul, yeah.
Rain fell in Canarsie today. Some thought it cooled down more than just the pavement. 31 students from Brownsville, from the Tilden houses there, lines, and into the nearly empty halls of Junior High School 211, the John Wilson School. People on both sides are said to be working to end the dispute, but the boycott is still on, and the underlying fears, tensions that have informed this whole tragic event haven't disappeared yet.
We, the combined PTAs of Canarsie, as of yet have met with no one. No one has made any compromises. No one has settled the issues involved. The boycott is strictly to get our community school board back in power with full authority for intra-district zoning. And nothing, I repeat, can be settled until they have this authority back, because they alone must resolve the situation.
And we have to take regents coming up, and we blue now. And like we have put applications in for different high schools. Now it's too late, you know. We have to try all over again.
We meet with anybody who help to relieve this tension so that we'll have peace, so that children can get back in school. I'm disturbed over the fact that children are out of school, and I'm talking about specifically the white children. We want them in school. They're supposed to be having and getting an education.
Today is this school, tomorrow is going to be this house, and it's going to be the other house, and it's going to be here. And this is going to be the end. If they want to break a neighborhood, they're going to break it. I'll tell you again, I lived in Brownsville and I know what happened. Why did we run away from there?
Why?
Why? You tell me why. Why? Because we cannot walk on the street. We couldn't be in our own apartment. It was free for all. They came in and they took what they wanted. How long can you live under this circumstance? I lived in a two-family house. We had 6 beautiful rooms and there was everything in peaceful. As soon as it came in, about 15 years ago, when the robbery started, you cannot. It's no day and no night.
So you're scared of that here?
Of course it's going to be the same thing.
Well, didn't y'all take everything from the black people?
Huh?
Didn't y'all take everything from the black people?
I don't understand you.
Yes, you do. You understand.
Talk.
Listen, when the black people come over from Africa, what did y'all white people do? Y'all took every doggone thing the black people had. Oh, yes, you did.
Yes.
Now
Yeah,
it's
come
yours
at 250 years ago. You came
no,
from
dear.
Africa.
Now it is yours. You know what I'm saying? Now it's our time. It's our time now. Yeah, you gonna walk away, right? But it's our time now. You know one thing? Listen.
Excuse me. Young lady.
No, I'm not a young lady. I'm 53 years old, dear. And you know one thing? Let me tell you something else. Listen, let me tell you one thing. When the black women was getting around here, going around in the kitchen, on their knees, scrubbing for y'all, you know one thing? Was nothing said. But now, the black is getting up on top, and now y'all want to sink us down. But let me tell you one thing. We have a right to the tree of life, right? And we sure got a right to this world. Oh, yes, we do.
You're right. Excuse me.
Why can't they go down there? Why can't they go down there? Why can't they go down there? They done took everything.
She's talking.
They done took everything. They took everything from us. Now why? Why can't they let them kids go down there and be down there in peace?
Isn't there any chance for peace in this neighborhood?
I don't know. Like there's a chance, but like the people have to get together and they have to do it themselves, you know. Like it's tough, you know, because like they say like they want Canarsie schools for Canarsie kids, but that's impossible, you know. It really is, you know. Like it's just not fair to everyone else, you know. I mean, it's just not fair. I don't think.
Richard Kotak filmed that report. Canarsie's grief is not an isolated incident. New York's many people seem in a mood these days to fight for power rather than engage in the long, patient struggle to work out the giving and the taking that's required if people are going to live harmoniously. The chairman of New York's Human Rights Commission, Eleanor Holmes Norton, says that tide can be reversed. And today she convened more than a dozen leaders of different ethnic and religious groups to see if they agreed. Did they?
They agreed. And that's a hopeful sign in the midst of any crisis. They agreed, and their agreement has some weight in a city in crisis because these were citywide leaders, people who are close to constituencies but have a citywide base. And we give you some idea of some of the things they said. There was, for example, a dialogue between Mario Cuomo, the lawyer and mediator, and Eugene Callender, the black head of the Urban Coalition, in which Callender at one point expressed what I'm sure is on the minds of lots of black people, and yet got a meaningful answer and got a satisfactory answer from Cuomo. Callender said the fact is that every time blacks make a thrust forward, there are whites who say they don't belong here, and it's historically been the case, and who knows but that it will always be the case. And Cuomo took him on by saying that if we can speak with whites, particularly with ethnic whites out in the boroughs, in terms of practicalities and not in terms of moralism, that there is in fact a vested interest they have in confronting these problems, the problems of distribution of population, of what schools people go to, that blacks are not going to disappear off into the ocean someplace, that he has discovered that people indeed will listen to that. And Gene Callender said he found that an honest response in the sense that Mario was not appealing to people's moralism, which lots of blacks don't believe exists any longer.
Yeah, Cuomo said the middle class have to be persuaded that, well, he started by saying in a statement that we got, the middle class is afraid the devices being used to uplift and alleviate the problems of the ghetto demand an inordinate sacrifice on their part, on the part of the middle class, and that they must be persuaded that these devices are necessary for their own good.
Yes, and there are ways to persuade them. For example, at a press conference held in advance of this meeting, I announced that I would begin investigation of blockbusting practices in Canarsie that had been reported to me as a result of the school situation. Yeah. And I asked people to call the commission and to send us reports about this. The fact is we have the country's first blockbusting law. And that ought to be put in motion right at this moment. And people in Canarsie I asked to help me by evening out the tension that blockbusters feed upon. They're vultures. When they see a community in disquieted, they know that that's ripe for picking people off, and they come in. And one way to stop that is to get kids back to school so they don't see this community as ripe for blockbusting. Indeed, Thomas Quick of the NAACP talked about how 200 families in East New York, 200 minority families who had been blockbusted into East New York had lost their homes now, and that's the result of blockbusting. And there were other leaders there, like Father Kennedy of the Brooklyn Archdiocese, who spoke about the need for particularly ethnic leaders to become involved in settling this dispute, and at the same time to work to maintain their own credibility so that they are indeed valuable in settling such disputes. And there were people like Haskell Lazaire of the American Jewish Committee, who's been working with us along with a number of other ethnic leaders to form a citywide ethnic coalition. And he specifically asked me to put on the agenda of a meeting now scheduled, indeed scheduled for some weeks, for November 14th, to discuss the formal launching of this ethnic coalition, to put some very specific issues on that agenda, and I agreed to do so. And Ralph Parada of the Ethnic Affairs Institute spoke about institutionalizing some of the techniques that had come spontaneousw over the Canarsie barricades. The people were screaming out, "Hey, you guys, why don't you come and talk with us?" And even kids were doing that. Now there was very valid criticism of the city in this respect. They said, why doesn't the city have something that facilitates that dialogue? How come people have to spontaneously kind of demand it over barricades?
You know, the sharpest criticism that many radical people have made of liberalism over the years is that liberalism is all talk. And the talk delays action, postpones action, softens the need for action, and things don't really change very much. As you listened to this talk today, what did you feel about the possibility of action coming out of it, or was it just more talk?
What came out of it was sufficiently significant in my view that I'm going to report directly to the mayor and his cabinet tomorrow at an 8 o'clock cabinet meeting, because very specific things came out. For example, Sylvia Deutsch, recently appointed to be planning commissioner, and who's the executive director of the American Jewish Congress, said, the first thing I want to ask the Planning Commission is, how come in this city, when one agency builds something, it doesn't know that another agency is building something at the same time? The tension that comes up because of lack of coordination among city, state, and federal agencies just about building, she wants to straighten that out as a Planning Commission. A number of other things came up. We were advised, for example, that all the community relations units in many city agencies ought to meet together more often as they do in the summertime. They ought to do it all year round, so there's coordination and development of an early warning system so that you aren't faced with a Canarsie.
Surprises, you mean?
Exactly right. We have an excellent crisis office, but that's just what it is, a crisis office as opposed to an early warning system. I'm going to speak to the mayor and his cabinet tomorrow on specific suggestions that came out of this meeting like this.
Okay, Eleanor Holmes Norton. Thank you. Your spirits are lifted a bit by
My
this.
spirits are lifted by this meeting.
That's good news. In Canarsie, the leaders of both sides today agreed that they shared the common goal of getting all the students back into school. And that sounds small, but all effective compromise is paralyzed until a first step is taken. The Central Board of Education has demanded a settlement report of some kind by tomorrow, and we anticipate some kind of proportional formula to emerge pretty soon. I'll be back after the weather with news on abortion, with the third of our voter family reports and the fourth of our explorations of South Brooklyn.
Cloudy and mild Thursday night. Chance of showers late Thursday and Friday morning. Partly cloudy Friday afternoon. Saturday, fair and mild.
Bernie Roth grew up on the Lower East Side. The city's in his blood. 5 days a week, sometimes 6, he hustles a cab across its tangled patterns, keeps up a non-stop rap about his beloved town. Bernie left his old neighborhood a few years ago after, as he puts it, that element began to move in. And today he and his wife Rita, who really was the girl next door, live with their 3 children in a quiet neighborhood in the North Bronx. It's a close-knit family. Stewart, a junior at CUNY, is solid for McGovern, which generates some pretty hefty arguments with his father, who's a Nixonite. And Rita, well, let's hear it from all of them in this third of Robert Anson's 4 family portraits.
It used to be a fantastic neighborhood years ago. It was a predominantly Jewish neighborhood, all predominantly white. It was just great. What can I say? It It was so great that I had the greatest time. My childhood was fantastic up here. If my kids ever, when I show my kids where I used to live, they don't believe it. They think, you lived over here, Daddy? Nah. I said, yes, I lived over here. I don't believe it. And I lived in this building right over here, 330 East 4th Street. On the first floor, that was my apartment. I lived there for about 17 years with my folks. Oh, safe. We left the doors open. I never had a key to my apartment. This area, this Lower East Side, was predominantly Democratic, mostly. And the kind of politicians that we had at those times knew that if they wanted to vote, they would have to do something for the people. If you needed any kind of problem, you went into the club and you got it. You can't get that today, I don't believe. They work for themselves personally, that's what I think. Whatever benefits them, not the working people. That's why we have all this here poverty, this filth, as you see in this here neighborhood and all those things. This is how I feel. Right? Okay? Watch yourself. Great, I might get a flat now.
What do you mean by what kind of neighborhood?
I don't know, what kind of neighborhood is it?
Pleasant, love nice people, average families. I think it's a Jewish and Italian neighborhood. Can I say it's a white neighborhood?
How do you fill up your day now that you're not employed?
Oh, God. I sleep late. I watch soap operas on television. I read. And I do a lot of walking. And I visit the library. I sit on the telephone more than I usually would.
Kathy, what are you saying?
The truth. I don't think that the average person really cares. Maybe men more than women, but I don't think if you get an average group of 4 or 5 women together, they would sit down and talk about politics, because I think it is run by politicians, and I don't think that little people have anything to say. This is just my opinion.
I'm supporting the big man. That's the way I look at it. He gets away with murder, and me it costs through the nose. I pay and pay and pay and pay, and don't see nothing for it, and don't get nothing for it. Whereas the big man goes scot-free, and he gets away with everything. He could enjoy his dollar, I can't. Where does my tax money go? I wish I knew. I can't even answer you where my tax money goes, because I don't see it on the streets in New York. Definitely don't see it.
The people don't seem to be able to affect politics. That's what's really bothering me, and that's the way it should be. That's what it's supposed to be in the Constitution. In the United States, it seems that even though the young people have a vote, it's more or less of just something put down on paper. It doesn't seem to affect anything by, it really should have had a much greater effect on this election. It doesn't seem to have any effect. I don't know whether, to, set my hopes up for 72 or whether, just to look forward to 76 when, Nixon will have to resign whether he likes it or not.
The high school halfback, Tony asked if it was 11 touchdowns. He said no, 10 touchdowns and 6 extra points. 1 game.
He's got to win votes, and this is the way he's going to win votes,
Yeah, but he can't win votes by saying one thing and then going back against another thing that he says, right, Stu?
Yeah, right, but he doesn't go back.
If I remember from reading the papers years ago or something, or what they had, the statements that they had made, was that he was never for Israel. Just now that he's running for presidency, he also made a big stand, for Israel.
Yeah, that's wrong right away. That's wrong. McGovern never came out pro-Israel. Right. I'll grant you that.
Right.
But he never came out against Israel.
I didn't say he was against it.
More or less, he wanted a balance of power. I don't think Israel should be, any more superior than anyone else, even though we do have relatives there.
Yeah, but Israel is a big thing in the Middle East, right? We need a power in the Middle East.
And Nixon promised, to stop inflation.
True.
Right. It's the same nonsense you're giving me.
What nonsense? I'm not giving you no nonsense. I'm just telling you a statement of what he said, right? I just gave you an incident.
I'm telling you, Nixon makes a million promises and goes on the TV, and they interpret it for the right way.
Make a million promises.
So there's
right?
your answer.
Right.
Okay.
One of the first men in this country to come out against our participation in the Vietnam War was Senator.
Why didn't he come up with it 4 years ago then?
More than you are today is Mr. Nixon, and you'll be sorry you did. This phony guy, this Kissinger, that's going around a secret imagery. Since when has the United States people of that going around to make their laws for them, or to call the shots for them? We're doing it now, haven't we? Right. Mr. Nixon is staying in the background, keeping his mouth shut, not saying a word about anything or anybody. Therefore, he cannot be accused of anything because he's saying nothing to be accused of in the first place. Right.
It was a world that's his man that he put there, right? Kissinger is his man, right? His policy. The President of the United States gave him the right.
Well, then you want McGovern in there. All right. Look, lady, that's why we live in America. Right. That's why we live in America. Right.
No, right now, a few of the people in my family are telling me where you can register and please go down and vote, and that they feel that this election is very important. My boys feel it's very important, and never having to tell me to go before, they were all telling me where and when I can register and please vote.
At least vote. I don't care. You want to vote for him? If I said if you vote in good conscience, vote for him. You can't vote in good conscience for that man. You wanted to vote for Lindsay, right? Good-looking guy. McGovern's good-looking.
Everyone I ever wanted to vote for, I told you, was Kennedy.
So you didn't vote for him?
Because I liked his wife.
McGovern's got a nice wife. You like Pat Nixon with a smile?
Not Julie.
And Julie Eisenhower, she goes in and says, I'll die for president too. Sure, she'll die. She's surrounded by security guards in the United States.
I don't think
when he gets on TV, you don't honestly believe what he's saying, do you?
I don't even listen.
And that's it. You know, when you think about it, only about 50%, 60% of the people in the country vote. They're able to vote.
Right.
So that other 40%, there's millions of votes, and it could mean a big decision.
Right.
You know, and the people that are undecided, if the race is close, they might have brought Nixon like on a landslide possibly, but they might bring McGovern over on the top. You know.
No, I told you, I have to really think about it. Maybe if it means so much to you and you think that'll be a big change or a big difference, I would have to maybe go down there and register and battle.
Yeah. If you just think about it, I guess that's half the battle.
What is the last name and spell it?
Roth, R-O-T-H.
R-O-T-H, Roth. Given name.
Rita, R-I-T-A.
R-I-T-A, Rita. Initial. None. 468110.
Is she in this district?
Yeah. Were you born in the United States?
Yes.
Female. How tall are you?
5 feet.
5 feet. Blonde.
I'll let you know.
Here we are.
Right.
Just indicate your name. Write your name. Then go into the booth and indicate your party and fold it up and put it in this tin box.
So my name now?
Yes, please. In front of me.
Just put it in this box.
I'm finished?
Clap it then.
Okay.
Now you're registered to vote. TV to make you registered to vote.
Of our political families tomorrow night, and then on election night, all 4 of them will be here live in the studios to say why they voted and how. Brownstones in South Brooklyn and Women for Abortion still ahead in this 60-minute edition of the 51st State. Fred Powledge has been guiding us through the ethnic communities of South Brooklyn, where he thinks there's still a chance to build a real community. And strangely, one of the ethnic groups that he has identified are the owners of the brownstone houses. Let's have a look at his report.
A lot of the people you see here are Brownstoners, at play and at rest. This is a block party in South Brooklyn, a community where it's still possible to see different ethnic groups living in relative peace with each other. Segregated, to be sure, but still in relative peace. One of those groups, not really an ethnic group by the usual standards, but certainly a distinct category of South Brooklynite, is the Brownstoner. Usually on a Saturday, you'll find Brownstoners in lumber yards buying building materials, or borrowing old bricks and stained glass windows from urban renewal sites, or painting or plastering or plumbing or stripping shutters, trying to keep the brownstone from falling down. But you'll also find them at the block parties, which we have a lot of in South Brooklyn, because block parties bring people together, and Brownstoners in New York believe in people. How long have you lived here?
We bought the house in July of 1970. I've only actually lived here since November of last year, though. We had an architect which we hired, and we had plans drawn up, and we then had construction done by a contractor.
So you're a real Brownstoner, aren't you? You did it from scratch.
Well, I don't know. I define a real Brownstoner as somebody who's nutty enough to do his own work, and major construction work. And I'm not a real Brownstoner in that sense. I don't have that kind of skill, but I suppose in the sense of having bought into an area that some people would consider marginal, I don't. And having spent a fair amount of money to renovate the house, yeah, that makes me Brownstoner.
Are you broken in spirit and billfold?
Oh, no. Billfold, certainly, but not spirit. I mean, if I was broken in spirit, we wouldn't have had this street fair here today.
It is worth it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, sure, I have much more space than I could have for anything, near the money that it's essentially costing me on a monthly, cost basis. And I own the place as opposed to filling somebody else's pockets. And so, yeah, it's much. I have nice high ceilings, and yeah, it's definitely worth it.
What else have you got? The more aesthetic things, perhaps.
Well, maybe I can best put that this way. We moved in here in November, and we gave a party in the second week in December, and we had 25 people here, and they were all young couples who lived within a 30-second walk from our front door. And that's great. And I know my neighbors, and I like them, and it doesn't matter that some of them are Syrians or Lebanese who have been here for 40 years, and some of them are Chinese who've been here for 25 years.
Who is tolerant of whom?
They tolerate us, but they've made us feel welcome, and they join into everything that we want to do as Brownstoners, and so it's a good neighborhood in that sense.
What's the worst thing ever happened to you as a Brownstoner?
As a Brownstoner? I guess the worst thing that ever happened to me as a Brownstoner was when I got back the bids from the contractors that were twice what we had expected. We were really babes in the wool when we went into this thing. We didn't know what we were getting into. We thought we did. We thought we'd heard all the horror stories and more stories about it. But I don't think we had any idea what we were getting into. And I think that if we had, we probably would not have done it. I think it would have scared us. Just the financial aspects of it, the fact that we've spent an awful lot of money. We still have an awful lot to do, and we're not sure where the money's coming from to do it. But, it's just going to take a lot longer to do it than we would have liked.
If you're a Brownstoner in South Brooklyn or any place else in New York, you spend an inordinate amount of time scraping, building, plastering, dipping, stripping, and deep in debt to various contractors. There's no rest from it, even on national holidays. One Labor Day weekend, I broke my arm in this house when I should have been off trying to catch trout, and instead I was trying to fix a ceiling. But it's worth it. In a brownstone, you can turn the amplifier volume all the way up to 10. You can have all the privacy you want, and the rent stays where it is. And for some people, there's an even more ultimate thrill to owning a brownstone, and that comes when they're asked to put their brownstone on the house tour.
It's a beautiful house, just great. Where did you get that chandelier? Now, that's just the kind of chandelier we want for our dining room.
Down in the lamp district of Manhattan. We bought the two of them, the two matching ones. It's not
right there in that
It's down near Canal Street.
Yes, I know that area. Because I looked down there and I just saw a lot of pretty awful stuff.
Well, you have to kind of wander around, but they've got everything if you keep looking.
Great.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Was something here that you took out, or was this an open area?
The central hall was just the way you find it now. We retained the arch, which I think is rather pretty. It just broke out the center part of it. Come on in, it's all right. We're just,
The fireplace in the dining room.
Yes.
Is that refaced?
Or is that...
That's considerably refaced, right?
No, I didn't know whether it's refaced or whether you just re-cemented between the bricks.
No, it's, you know, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. A lot of money and a lot of energy. If you manage to renovate one and you're not divorced by the end of it, I think people consider you arrived. No matter how your house looks. So, and we do what we can ourselves and other things we've paid for, so.
What kind of questions have people been asking you? What do they want to find out?
Most people seem to be interested in the floors. And, you know, how do you sand them? Several people have asked questions about the shared backyard arrangement. They want to know whether the fireplaces are working. They're interested in whether your child really keeps his room the way it looks today, and of course that's obvious, no. How long you've lived here, how much it's cost, how much time, you know, you've put into it, whether you used an architect or not.
That's what I want, the answers to specific questions rather than the big heavy ones like, is it worth it and everything.
Yeah, well, we don't. That depends on when you're asked.
Is it true that being on the house tour is the pinnacle of being a brownstoner?
I suppose it is. I mean, you know, I guess you've sort of arrived or something when you've gotten your house together and yourself together enough to be on a tour.
How much commitment to urban America is there in living in a brownstone?
Well, I have, and my husband, a tremendous commitment to the city in general and specifically to the neighborhood, and I suppose to some degree to the block. And if you move in, I suppose if you invest in the neighborhood by, you know, putting your money down on a house, and then you get involved in a nursery school, and then you fight for a park, and you have something to do with the placement of a junior high school, and you act as a volunteer and work on a poverty program and so forth. That, you know, by the time you've gotten through, you really are very involved, and it becomes the whole way of life.
But also, you got quite a financial investment in this too. And brownstone people are really well off in comparison with other people in New York, aren't they?
I think they are if they've gotten the brownstone finished and had a year or two to recuperate during the time that it's going on. You know, you don't have much extra money, and you're not availing yourself of some of the things that you came to the city to take advantage of. You know, you go out and buy another can of paint and paint something instead of going out and buying theater tickets.
If you had your druthers between living here or any place else in the world, what would you choose?
Well, I guess if I had my druthers, which is to say that if I were as rich as that takes, I would own a brownstone on, I don't know, East 63rd Street in Manhattan. Because that to me, I mean, you're talking about the same, having the possibility of the same community feeling. You're talking about having a much nicer, you know, an area that isn't coming back. It came back 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And you're talking about the convenience of living in Manhattan, which for somebody who works there and who plays there from the standpoint of the theater and this kind of thing.
But you wouldn't have Syrians and Lebanese and Chinese. You'd have the Russian embassy, but that'd be about all.
Well, that wouldn't be very desirable. But too many demonstrations all the time. Yeah, you're right. That's something we'd miss. It's marvelous to be able to walk less than 5 minutes from your house and go to a really good Near Eastern restaurant. You walk into some of these stores on Atlantic Avenue, and then from, you know, it's like walking into heaven. The smell is so fantastic of all the Near Eastern spices and this kind of thing. And we have a marvelous Chinese restaurant up on Court Street that we frequent all the time. And yeah, I'd miss that kind of thing. But the East 60s ain't bad.